I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording process is posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Coulterman.
Present.
Streisand.
Here.
Camper.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Hendricks.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Wilkin. Here.
All right, first item this evening is the draft minutes of February 1st, 2022.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Camper, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 7-0.
All right, the next four items make up this evening's consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Camper, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 7-0.
Next, we have the mayor's appointments. Dr. Elizabeth Neely replaces Corey Gray to the Civil Service Commission for the remainder of term.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Camper, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 7-0.
All right, next we have under administrative items, presentation and acceptance of Seward Memorial Library's annual report. We have with us Library Director Becky Baker.
Hi, Becky Baker, 2443 Bluff Road.
Thank you.
I've given you the printout of the annual report, just because I like to read paper and not necessarily on the screen. Those share numbers that state statute requires me to share with you, but I'm also happy to answer any questions. Once again, last year we dealt with a lot of staffing issues, COVID issues, like everyone else, and so we made changes best we could. We received more thank yous than ever before for our drive-up window, especially during the 6 weeks we were closed for COVID. So that was very gratifying to know we did something right with the new building. We had a great summer program with a lot of guest speakers, big crowds in attendance. I think people were ready to get out last summer. Now, of course, we're down again, and now we're back up again with program attendance. It just kind of goes in waves following the COVID numbers. So, any questions?
We do really appreciate all your hard work and all your staff's work. I know this last year in particular has been pretty trying, and I think having the library open and available to the public, especially with the drive-through, I think did help a lot of people cope with what otherwise could be an isolated period in their lives. Greg?
If I may, I don't get an opportunity to have a lot of my department heads here, and this is kind of the one time we get to see Becky for sure. I just want to dote on the work that Becky's had done, not only the last year, but my entire time serving here at the city of Seward and her many years of experience. She probably had it the hardest through the last 2 years in regards to staffing issues. I know we all had to deal with that, all of our individual employers, COVID issues, but she got hit extremely hard by just a calamity of circumstances unrelated to COVID that just really hit our library family. They're very, very hard. There are a number of retirements. And then with our current employment market, she's had a number of great candidates get right up there, and then when they're about to get hired, about to show up for their first day or work through their first day, opportunities abound for good people, and they move on immediately. And so she's had to really juggle, and I commend her especially, but also her staff and all of our friends and family over there that really, really work hard to make that such an amazing place. It's still a showpiece for us. So we have so many meetings over there when we're doing economic development projects and trying to get people to come to town. I see Jonathan shaking his head. Everybody we talk to that never stepped foot in the city of Seward, but is coming for the first time to maybe look at the rail campus or some other economic opportunity, they are amazed by the quality of the library and how wonderful that facility is. So thank you so much, Becky.
Absolutely, and enjoy the treats.
Wow.
Share them if you want, but I won't tell anyone.
Thank you.
Unless there's any questions or comments from the council, I entertain a motion to accept the Seward Memorial Library annual report.
Second.
Motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Camperth, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 7-0.
Alright, next we have a resolution approving an interlocal cooperation agreement with the Seward County School District, Seward Public Schools related to a wellness center. We have Greg, you wanna kick this off?
I will. I'll do some traffic direction here tonight. We'll start off with the discussion about what's got us to this point procedurally. Then we'll have, I think Dr. Dominy will get up and update you on the actual wellness center project, the status in regards to some other grants that we've been operating and working under for design purposes and otherwise. And then we also have Paul Davidson here to discuss any questions in regards to financing long-term after the ballot question that will be discussed later. So as we reworked up, a little backtracking, we reworked up the Seward Wellness Center as a project, and I think we started discussing this, considering this well over a year ago when this started to gear back up again. And one of the ideas that was included in that discussion was utilizing the additional authority for a 0.5% sales tax to fund a portion of the project. That 0.5% is not utilized currently by the city of Seward, but is utilized by the city of Lincoln, I believe York, David City, Beatrice, Crete, a number of other facilities, Papillion, which we know now. The requirement for that to go above and beyond 1.5% is that you have to have an interlocal agreement per state statute to authorize putting that even on the ballot. What you look for is different partners. I had a conversation today with someone about this topic, and what you look for is you look for an interlocal partner that makes sense. I gave the example of Beatrice. They renovated a entire downtown block to move their fire station. It was located under their municipal building, auditorium. For years and years and years, they needed new space. They housed equipment for the volunteer fire department, so it made sense for their volunteer fire rural to be their interlocal partner. You may find on roads projects that you partner with the county and develop county roads that are interconnected with the city highway projects and things like that. So clear back when we first started these discussions and started gearing back up the possibility of looking at a wellness center, it seemed the logical partner in that would be the school district due to the nature of this kind of facility. At the time, again, we didn't have an exact location, but that's when the discussion started potentially looking near the middle school, on the middle school property, or different school property that was owned up there, if you remember those conversations clear back last spring. So we took a look at that, and we generally thought that would be the ask that we would make. We couldn't think of a better interlocal partner. And so ultimately what we found out was best laid plans. We thought we were gonna have a special election potentially last fall, and then through research by legal team contacting Department of Revenue, they said, no, if you're going for the 0.5% above and beyond the 1.5%, you have to do it on a general or primary ballot. And so that extended that out to this May as our next potential opportunity. In the meantime, as we all are pretty much well aware, we had some grant opportunities open up with the Shovel Ready Grant Project with ARPA funds. That application was turned in July 1st and shored up, and it's sat there dormant and waiting ever since. The state legislature is sorting through the process of allocating more funds for that grant, so we still don't ultimately know the final status of that, but we know we are still in the queue and we're still qualified at this point. We haven't been bumped out, and we feel very confident. Lastly, I think we talked about it last time we were here talking about the CCCF grant. And after your authorization to at least potentially put this on the ballot, and for an understanding that the city of Seward would operate such a facility should we create it, we also were able to kick off a fundraising mechanism to match that Shovel Ready grant. And they were able to raise in about 60 days $6.7 million of grant or of pledges to this project to help leverage dollars to the grant funds to make this become a reality. So, worked through that process. City administration, city attorney, myself, finance director Nick Wolf. We met with Paul. We met with Mike Rogers, our bond counsel, and we put together the documents that you see before you tonight. So it's an interlocal agreement with the Seward School District, and then ultimately the ballot question that would be go before, if approved tonight, the voters of Seward on the May 10th, 2022 ballot. Ultimately, last night, this item was considered by the public school district. Sorry, a little tongue-tied there, and it was approved unanimously to put this forth and enter into the interlocal agreement. I stopped by and presented and answered questions for the school board last night, and worked our way through that process. And so it is here tonight. It does need to be completed one way or the other by March 1st so that we hit the deadline to provide this to the county clerk, which is our election official. And so we need to have this completed, if it's going to go forward, by that timeline to meet the May 10th ballot. That is the ground laying. I can answer specifics and technicals. I'll have Dr. Domini come up after that, and I can answer questions later, give you an update on kind of things we've been up to in regards to the design and some of the documents you also have with you. And then, like I said, Paul is also here to discuss any financing things that will take place later on. Questions?
Pretty straightforward.
There we go. Well, Dr. Domini?
Matt Doming, 1970 Rainbow Avenue. Good to be with you this evening. It's been a couple months since we were here to kind of talk about the overall project. And so Greg did a fantastic job really outlining the different work that's been done. And so I'll try to add on to that a little bit because there is some exciting movement that we've experienced over the last couple months. You know, I think we really need to thank the Village of Staplehurst and the Staplehurst Rep Program because we were able to work with them for that initial CCFF planning grant. And that established some funds that we were able to work with an architect and start doing some of that planning and really talking about what would a facility like this look like. And so we're very grateful to Staplehurst that we could be part of that and partner with them. So today I'm going to cover some of the financial piece. Jen's going to talk a little bit more about the facility piece that you have in front of you. But we met this last week with the Peter Kiewit Foundation. And of course our city manager was there, our nonprofit was there, and landowner Max Wake was also there at that meeting. And it's, first of all, it's an honor to get a meeting with the Peter Kiewit Foundation. When they came, they were very impressed that the city and the nonprofit, landowner, everybody was a cohesive unit that really had a unified vision of where we wanted to go. So as we described the project, it was really evident to them that this is a project that they may want to fund. So they've asked us to fill out an application, which is the second huge hurdle that you get. Once you get that point where they ask you to do that, it's an honor. They are, of course, wanting to know kind of how this last step that Greg alluded to goes, and then we'll place that application. So, but they talked about really wanting to fund projects using a three-legged stool. And so that first part of that three-legged stool is making sure that you secure some private donations from your local area. And Jana and Shane just worked tirelessly to secure these pledges from communities, from people all over our community, businesses, organizations, individuals. We had people donate anywhere from $100 to $1 million. We had over 110 different organizations and businesses and individuals pledge funds to us. So I mean, there's some serious sacrifice that people are willing to do to move this project forward, and we're very grateful to all of those people who've been willing to pledge. The second piece of that three-legged stool is grant funds. And as Greg alluded to, we have applied for that shovel-ready grant. And at this point, it's all just sitting there waiting. The legislature is determining how they'll appropriate those funds. And so that's a waiting game. We may not know about those funds until the end of May. So it still could be a ways out there. But we're not waiting for that grant. We moved on to some other grants as well. And so I want to hit a few possibilities. Of course, we've got the Peter Kiewit Foundation. We have the Ackley Foundation, and we're reaching out to the Robert B. Daughtry Foundation, Susanna Walter Scott Foundation, the Sunderland Foundation, William and Ruth Scott Foundation, the Sherwood Foundation, and the Ethel Abbott Foundation. So we're doing all that groundwork too to kind of help with that second portion of that three-legged stool. And then finally, that last leg is public funding, and so that's what we're here tonight to really, hopefully set that stage for putting that to the vote of the people, letting them decide if this is a project that they want to pursue. So Jana's here to talk just a little bit about the building itself.
Jana Hughes, 1825 Deer Run Drive, Seward. So not a lot has changed on the general, what's going to be in the facility. We've been working with BBH Architecture for just kind of a high level design. We wanted to get square footage so that we could get our numbers checked on costs. And I thought I'd just go over quick. I believe everybody got these, okay,
It's in the packet.
layouts in your packet. So on the first floor, we're looking at a 6-lane indoor swimming pool, as well as some sort of kids pool, either hooked onto it or beside it. 2 full-size basketball courts that could be made into 4 practice courts. It can be pickleball courts, it can be volleyball courts. Men, women, and family locker rooms. Some office space, and we worked with Greg on the amount of office space that he thought Seward would need for that. And then a child watch area, the youth center / adult room, and then multi-purpose rooms, and those would be used for that before and after school childcare, which, as you guys know, is a source of funding for the operating of the facility. On the second floor, we're looking at, the gym will be open, but we're looking at a walking track that goes around the gym and around the cardio area. We'll have cardio and strength areas, so the treadmills, the ellipticals, weightlifting equipment, weights, things like that. The walking track, as is now, is about 1.75 meters, so 9-ish laps would be a mile, just to give you kind of a thought of how that works. And then a couple fitness studios up there. We are also planning on a possible phase 2 at some point. We want to make sure that that's in the design, and that would be for an indoor field house, like a turf field house, as well as expansion to a 3rd full-size basketball court. Not this round, but that would be phase 2, those 2 things. So with all that work, we've been going with BBH, and we got a plan of square footage by space. And we're looking at about a 62,000 square foot facility total. And then we had BBH put their numbers to it, and then they also did kind of a gut check, if you will, with Hampton Construction. And we're looking at this facility being around that $17 to $18 million number. And so we're looking at we always talked about a third funding. So that's kind of the realm that we're looking at. Questions on that process?
Any questions for Jana? Or Dr. Dominique too, right?
Yeah, right.
Yep, I'm back here, you bet, yes.
And I would just add, one of the other things that we did throughout this process, which went way into last year, because I remember being on the side of the highway with a flat tire in the middle of a snowstorm.
I know. That was my car.
And
it was 0 degrees.
We've been visiting facilities across the state. I know Matt has attended with us when we went out to Papillion Landing. Papillion Landing, if you don't have an opportunity, you should see what they did. Completely city funded with a 0.5-cent sales tax, $62 million facility, indoor, outdoor, all the accoutrements, gigantic field house. digital library space and gathering spaces and everything else. And we went
Wedding rental spaces.
and we went through painstakingly with their director and asked the really rude, mean questions of how do they utilize the space, what would they have done differently, what was an overstep, did you go too far, what did they learn? And we asked these same questions at every facility we went to. I know that Jenna and Matt just went up to Wayne and saw their facility, their wellness and recreation facility. And so we've tried to visit these all over the place and also get square footages and actual floor plans for all of these with all the measurements and look at how they compare and get that sense of seeing it and being in it and then also seeing it on paper. Because as Mike always tells me when we're working on roads projects and stuff, it's one thing to look at a 2D item on the, on a map or on a drawing, but it's something else to be standing amongst it. And so we've tried to do as much of that as we can, but at the same time eliminate as much waste as we could within this design. Again, this is not the final design in any way, shape, or form. Ultimately, what would happen is that if this item does go to the ballot, should you approve it tonight, we will begin the process of developing an RFQ for development and design, and we'll assemble a team, a committee, to review submissions submitted by architectural and engineering firms. And then we would select right around the time of the final vote, prepare ourselves and select the committee without expending any funds. And then we would have that architectural firm ready to begin final design and actual design of the final facility right after the vote goes through, so we don't waste any time moving on. And we have the pledge funds and the grant funds would probably be released by that point to start that off. And then we would work through what we'll get to in a little bit with Paul is the financing element of it with the bond. So, but incredible work. I commend the committee, Dr. Dominique, Jana, Matt has helped us on that, Shane Bach, and a few others that have come in and out throughout the time period over the last year. It's been kind of a Herculean effort, and I commend them because they're the ones who've got it to this point. And so I've just tried to answer questions on behalf of the city and kind of guide the needs of the city, whether it's programming or otherwise, developing budgets and things like that to show to inquiries. And so it's really their efforts that kind of got it to where it is today.
And if I may speak, I would like to, I was invited to be part of this committee last June, and I think timing is everything. The effort put forth by the people on the committee for the private fundraising, the work ethic, the drive, the countless presentations to civic organizations, groups, the opportunity for the grants, to get everything put together. I think an opportunity like this doesn't come along very often. So I just feel that the intelligence of the community, they're willing to question everything, the willingness to really agonize over everybody's nickel and dime, right down to the last penny of how the money will be spent. Their ethics towards the project is just so commendable. I don't think you've ever, I don't remember ever seeing a team of people get together like this, together to put forth a project. So I just, I'm just tagging along. I'm kind of the, everybody knows me. I'm just comedic relief when I'm riding in the car, right? And in case there's another flat
No,
tire.
he's the engine nerd. He's the engine nerd that says, well, wait, maybe the pool chemical
Maybe the chemical truck
room
hose
should be on this part
Yeah.
of the design, because
Right.
then you can back the truck up to it. It's like, oh yeah, duh, yes it should. So
But
that's what
but-
he's providing. It's
But
great.
again, I think there's, in a small town or whatever in our community, to have this small group of people that have worked so hard, so diligently, and Matt, you live here at this time, and Greg, and to raise your families. I think this is a project where everybody in this community is going to be really proud of it. Every family, every person is going to be impacted by this place where we can all hang out and do cardio rehab when you're my age, and take your kids there when they're in diapers and stuff. So it's been a real pleasure just working with all of you and getting to know the people that I don't know, you know, I would just encourage the rest of my fellow council people to really get behind it and really support it. And if you have any questions about it, ask the people that have been agonizing over it for hours, days. I don't know how much, you know,
Years.
sweat equity you have in it, but
Yeah,
it's
years.
Years.
way too much. So, but I commend all of you, Greg, and you're a big part of that too. I mean, you're passing on the praise, but you've worked your tail off on this, so
And I know,
I can say that.
and I know he's not here, but Shane, I don't know if he's at a game or if he's
He's at a
reffing.
game.
I
Oh,
think
is
he's,
he?
I think
thought
he's
no, I think
reffing.
Milford played Boys Town.
No,
Yeah,
his son had a game too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's at a game, but the foundation that he's laid, because this has been, you guys know this far better than I do. He's agonized over this thing, and he really has put in a lot of time and allowed this committee to kind of step in and ask the hard questions and flourish to get it to this point, whatever it may ultimately turn out to be, or if it even goes through. But
Well, can I just, the one thing that when we went around and talked to different groups, I said, every time we started the conversation, there are 3 things that make this different. Because everybody, you go in, they're like, oh, okay, we've heard this story before, they want a wellness center, whatever. It's the location, it's the right location, and we had a generous family, and it's right by the middle school, so we can have the youth center there, you can have before and after school childcare, so it's location, the trail will go right by it. The second thing is the opportunity for the city would run it, right? Because YMCA isn't gonna come. That was the biggest question of it. Who's gonna run it? I don't wanna put money into something that's just gonna fall apart, with who ran it. And then third is the opportunity for that third leg of the stool, if you will, with the sales tax. Just that partnership between whether it be grants, private and public, and the vote of the people. Do we want it? Is, you know, this will prove it, right? So.
Well, and I think that's the thing that, you know, we all see on social media all the time where people are like, oh.
Why don't we
yes.
have a roller skating rink? Why don't we have a whatever?
Yeah. And I think this is something that it's really putting it in front of the community to say, okay, here the whole thing is teed up, ready to go. You have the private funds raised, you have the commitment of the city and the school system. Now let's move to that next step, and if they give the green light, then here it goes. I think that's exciting. Well done.
Have you guys had discussions with the other fitness businesses
So,
in town?
Some with like the Enchanty, like Christy Hollister and those, and some of that just because she herself is very supportive, and Pilates, but those are more, I call boutique exercises, like exercise studios, many different types of yoga classes. If there would be a yoga class in the center, you know, it might be only 1 or 2 times a week, like that's just a whole different aspect of it when there's 5 classes and they're all different kinds. But they've also talked about, and that's something the city can do, is partnering with maybe the Enchanty. People can come do a yoga, you know, present there, and then if people like it, they might join Enchanty for more in depth of that. Same with like a Pilates or whatever. The Snap Fitness, nothing competes directly, I guess, if you will, because like a Snap Fitness doesn't have the exercise classes. It's got the cardio and strength equipment, and guess what? You can do it 24 hours a day. You can pull up right to the front door and walk in. So I think it's a different clientele, and they can all coexist. So I haven't spoken to the new owners of the Snap Fitness, and I have spoken with T's Jim Conrad, and he's okay with it too. And again, he's kind of a different niche, if you will. It's kind of the musclehead, younger high school kids, if you will. But they're gonna keep doing that, right? They don't wanna come in when there's kids playing. This is a little bit different clientele, so it might hit them a bit, but I very much think this can all coexist. And I think there's opportunity for some partnerships too.
Carl, did you have something?
I'd just say commend talked to Matt before this at the basketball game of, I know myself and former council president Chris Schmidt were with Shane on the previous roundabout on this committee in fundraising, and the effort that it takes, I can't describe it. It's unbelievable, but to pull off what you guys have pulled off in that short amount of time, based on my experience on the previous years, is
So, to
unbelievable.
that, it was a lot of work, but it wouldn't have happened if there weren't belief in the project,
Yeah.
right? No one's going to pledge over a 5-year time frame, $10,000, $2,000 a year for 10 years, or for 5 years if they didn't believe in it. And I think that attests to what what the project is and the differences this time around, that you were able to get that
Yeah.
kind of pledge.
Yeah, and just to add on to it is just seeing those steps of where we were at and to where we're at now, just seeing the learning that has happened with the experience that we've encountered in the past and carrying that forward into the future. I mean, this is such a promising thing for the community, and in looking at the numbers and everything like that, based on what we have in that interlocal agreement, I mean, we're looking at right around a 10-year repayment for a generation of use moving forward. I think that capitalizes a lot on everything going forward with this and the promise of what Seward's offering to the people in the city, let alone the county.
We were talking, Jen and I were talking earlier this morning about community building and, you know, amenities and young people wanting to be somewhere and wanting to return to somewhere. And I think this is another part of what is, you know, we need in Seward, for the young families that want those opportunities.
I would say it's kind of the one amenity we don't have, right? We've got great trails, we've got a great outdoor swimming pool, we've got an amazing library. We've just got a lot of nice things, but the one thing is that indoor space. Families to do something in the winter, and it's not just families, it's older people, you know, young people. That's a lot of opportunity. And bringing back the youth center is a good one too.
So how long do you guys plan on staying on committee-wise? Like,
It's my
tomorrow?
understanding that, like, it gets passed from the ballot or whatever, and it goes through, and then it automatically is now the city's obligation to continue to design and all of that other kind of stuff. Where do you guys see yourselves? Like, is it just like deuce out, or?
I could see the nonprofit existing for a long time to help sustain. So if we can help with some fundraisers or other projects that we can be able to keep contributing funds to the wellness center, I think that would be our goal. And Greg, is that pretty accurate as to what you would see that nonprofit do too?
Ultimately, I think there's an administrative board that's contemplated in the interlocal, and they'll have kind of an overarching recommendation. Ultimately, this facility will be controlled by the city council because it is a city-owned and operated facility at the end of the day. But that interlocal will have elements of the school board and the city council working together to work with the executive director of the facility and the administration to kind of oversee things. That gives an opportunity to have some input. I don't know that we'll have people forever in all these positions, or any of us here at that point in time, but that gets some of that input, and then that discussion, I think, is what we talked about, and it kind of gets into the bond, and we're kind of jumping ahead here a little bit. One of the questions we had months ago was whether we would try to run the bond in perpetuity and maybe use those funds to kind of use as seed money for capital improvements in the future to help cover when the HVAC system goes out of the roof or anything else. That is not a possibility when this bond is set and approved by the council, and Paul can speak more to this. It runs for the life to pay off this capital building, and when we're done, the sales tax is gone, and it runs off. And the bond is paid, and that's it. There's no extra on top. That will have to be generated if we want a foundation or something else, just like we do with the library. That will have to be in addition to and worked on outside of the guise of what we'll do with this project.
And Greg, would a foundation like that be something that you could create on their own, or does it have to be created by us?
They can create on their own, and we can be the beneficiary. I don't want to get into too much of the legal, because I don't fully do that sort of. I'm not an attorney for any of you. But
It'd be similar to the library.
it'd be very similar to the library foundation. There would be a board that would be probably appointed by this body.
Because you have, like the library has a library board, then you have a foundation. So when there's a capital issue, like, you know, when we want to fix a roof or something like that, then the foundation may step in and say, okay, we can cover that or a portion of that to the city's benefit. And so,
I think you'd want that foundation for possible estate gifts. And I know we talked about before versus setting a board up yourself and whatever, maybe having it as a under the umbrella of the Legacy Fund of Seward County and let them, because then they can manage the money and whatever. There's a board that determines where that money goes and it's your money. But yeah, something like that for, because I think this would get legacy gifts. The library still gets legacy gifts and things, or estate gifts, sorry, and things like that. Was that your question though, or are you asking more detailed, like what happens from May 10th on if the vote passes?
Well, I just think I don't know, just to have, I know that we're not trying to get all intense on this, because if it doesn't go through on May tenth,
Yes.
then, like, it's no loss out. But
Yeah.
like, for me, just a couple more answers, like, my true answer is like, does the city really think we can handle this? Like, can we do this? Can we get people to employ? Can, like, all of those kind of things to be, I mean, this is great, I love it, and I'm totally supportive 100% of this project. It just, it scares me, because I'm like, I don't see anything. As far as like numbers and all of those things to kind of make it be like, oh yeah, dude, totally, let's go.
And ultimately, it's hard with the numbers right now. I do have a budget. I created a budget for this facility because it was requested by some of the private donors. They want to see generally what is your budget. But without knowing what the final facility is and what's contained in it, if we cut out for savings purposes the pool or make it a 6-lane competition pool and that's it, a lot of the elements get thrown out. We visited Papillion Landing and they don't have any lifeguards on duty because of the classification of their pool. We could take that up to help alleviate some of our costs in regards to staffing. But those are things we're gonna have to walk through over this process that we didn't wanna get too knee deep in, because it's a lot of time taken away by myself and the other administration members to dedicate to that, to something we can't guarantee is gonna happen. So we've tried to balance that, but I've created that budget. It's comparable to the Holdridge Y, the Beatrice Y, the Wayne Recreation Facility. We received, as I've stated before, 5 years worth of financials from them, and we went through and compared what they had in their facilities, what we thought we would need, and then tried to align it. And then I built it, it basically looks exactly like your budget forms. I built it within our budget, had it double checked by Nick. I used comparables I used the middle school for my utilities and said, it's about close in size, let's use that as our utility for gas, electric, water usage. And so we feel confident in the budget I created. I can't tell you that that'll be the correct one for when the facility's ultimately designed. But it's there, and again, it's still designed with a little bit of help from generating funds from activities, probably less than 10% of the total expense budget. Will come from daddy-daughter dances, extra athletic tournaments, and being creative. We do need to recruit an executive director. My hope is that this is somebody that's familiar with these facilities, that wants to come in and understands both that operational aspect, but also the fundraising aspect, because these don't operate without somebody that really has that in mind. But if this is what the community wants, then we're gonna go find it. We're gonna go find the right people, and we're gonna make it work, because that's what we've been tasked to do if this is approved by the voters.
So yes, that, yeah.
Is that,
Mhm.
okay.
And we're gonna need the committee to even go through that process, because they've done a lot of the groundwork. You know, I need Dr. Gami and Janet to help me convince somebody to come be an executive director of this. If you task us with going and hiring that person, and we can't leave it to chance. I mean, we're gonna have to recruit some of these people
Right. And I
and
think
try to get them
that's
in.
Where I needed a little bit more of that security is like, you suddenly weren't leaving.
But-
Give us at least 48 hours, Janet,
Okay.
okay?
I'm not going anywhere.
But again, ultimately, not an overabundance of full-time employees. I think I have 5 total housed in the building, one of which you already have, which is the Parks and Rec position that Adam Bodie fills right now. And amazingly enough, we kind of forget, because Adam's so focused on our rec programming. Adam helps supervise and operate a facility that's comparable to Papillion Landing, actually, down in Fenton, Missouri. He sent us the plans and specs for it and showed us it, and I was like, wow, you helped run this? And he's like, yeah, that's what we ran in Parks and Rec down there, and I was housed in that facility. And it is gargantuan. It is on par with Papillion Landing, if you ever get an opportunity to see Papillion Landing. So he does have some
But for the
experience.
record, if you see Papillion Landing, that is not what we will be building.
Yes, yes,
For
it's
the
not.
record, anybody that's been to Papillion Landing, it is crazy nice. And not that this isn't gonna be nice, but it, like, top of the line finishes, top of the line, a lot of extra space. But it was kinda like they took the library, the harvest hall, a rec center,
Senior
Senior
Center.
a senior center, all in one.
Catering
humongous-
kitchens.
Catering, yeah, humongous space, so.
So aesthetically wise, we're obviously
Aesthetically
not
wise, we're talking
like-
like polished concrete floors,
low of
the
low.
open ceiling, low but high durability, ease of maintenance, ease of cleaning, things like that. But like a good gym basketball court, wood floor, a rubbery floor in the exercise studios and the cardio areas, things like that. But not, I mean, the Pavilion Landing had a fireplace that was as long as this wall, one of those skinny fireplaces with couches and, all of this. Really nice.
Yeah, but that's not.
Really nice
Nope.
locker. Their locker rooms were glass. Their locker doors were glass, and then it had some break. Go figure. Like, well, that's not
Like,
we have
where
glass.
you put your stuff in, those are glass.
Really?
So with the projections that were on here, as far as your like
Square footage.
18,
Or
whatever, the
the
18
cost.
million as far as the cost, how secure are you in those? Like, do you? I mean, we all know everything's expensive. It's all gonna go up. But I mean, are we looking at?
We ran
I'm
it
gonna
by
say it,
we ran it by Hampton, and they bumped it up $50 a square foot, and so that's where we feel comfortable with that. But I can't. We're not gonna start building for what, a year at the earliest.
So the
and-
architect made that projection, and then Hampton Construction came in and validated those numbers
Yep.
and made some adjustments. And again, this is all just, initial
Right. I just
ideas,
don't
but
wanna
so.
see it end up like the
Right.
jail situation where
Oh,
we're
right.
$26 million short on budget, and now we have to like figure out where we're going
Sure.
or something like that.
Oh, I-
I'm gonna say it. Like, I just don't wanna get to that
Well, and
stage.
we should have a better handle on what we have incoming too, at some point with the shovel-ready grant, and then we'll apply for these other grants, so like, maybe by summer-ish. I mean, what if we get 8 million in grants, or 9 million in grants, I mean, some of that too. But you can do things during detailed design as well. I think that, if we can't have whatever, we need room maybe for an add-on later if we have to. Ideally, we wanna get this, but, and we'll take it as we go. But when we go into detailed design, like, I think when they're talking pool area, you have the pool managers there that can, look at it. And I've talked to Corey Gray before, cause he does the swim team here, I know he doesn't maybe anymore, but what specific people, when you're talking about certain parts that fit their, knowledge, so we wanna have those guys in on those discussions.
Cause that's just a built number, right? That's not like turnkey, ready to go
No, this is
number.
ready to go,
That's like,
Furnishing, equipment, all of it, it's all in there.
yeah.
Plus 10% inflation.
Yeah, they tried to be conservative, but we also tried to trim as much fat and
We really,
I didn't need an
we're down
800
to the
square
bare
foot
bones.
room for laundry.
Yep.
My counterpoint, I've had others mention the situation with the Justice Center, and my counterpoint to that has been that fortunately for us, this is a project that's been requested by the community, and we can go out and still fundraise and continue that arm with, I don't think there was a lot of fundraising going on
No.
for the Justice Center.
and I get that. I'm just saying in the hypotheticalness of it. Like, I don't want it to be like, oh yeah, 1/3, and we have our heart set on $5.4 million, and then all of a sudden the next go round it's like, you're responsible now for 15. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't want to see that happen.
I had fun today. I was finishing up our application that will get sent out tonight to the CCCFF grant that you authorized us to do. And so I was going through the history of this, and one of the fun things I brought it tonight, and I know this project predates even this time frame, but I had a copy of the Seward, Nebraska 2012 Strategic Plan Community Scorecard. And it has, you name it, projects on here: blight studies, animal shelters, ADA upgrades, fiber optic installation, ball field lighting, dog run, bypasses for the highway, you name it, they're all listed. And the number one response on this, and it's ultimately laid out as a strategic item in this plan, which I think John, Sid, Mayor, I think you were involved in this. The number one project listed is a wellness center, a wellness and technology training center development. And it was listed on 26% as the most important project in 2012, and then that was reiterated through a lot of our other efforts, like the maternal health, child maternal health grant effort that we undertook over a year with a symposium of 80 of our closest friends on Zoom. And then from that came the amenities that we put in the facility from that symposium. We did an online survey. and I think we've hit as many things as we could. Obviously, we talk about the field house and some of those other elements being phase two. Again, phase two
Alyssa,
items.
I'm not fundraising for phase two.
Yeah, phase two items are not also included in the bond. That's not, unless somebody between now and this summer shows up with a massive estate gift and just drops it on her head, and we go, all right, add some of these other elements. None of those will be able to be included in this bond, and that's a whole restart effort.
Is it only an interior pool or is there an exterior pool in phase one?
No, just interior.
Possibly phase two or three?
We don't have plans for that. There potentially could be room, but
There's
we're
not.
not. The phase two right now is just the indoor field house and the third basketball court.
I'll introduce a resolution.
Well, I want to give you the full perspective, and Paul is here, so briefly, Paul, if you want.
Okay, cause I have questions.
Yep, Paul, if you want to just speak a little bit to the financing element of this, should the ballot go through and be approved by the voters.
Happy to. Good evening, everyone. Great presentation from everybody so far. I think it's pretty well covered. So I'll be brief in my remarks, but I guess,
Identify yourself.
Yeah, first name and address for the record.
Paul Grieger, Omaha, Nebraska, D.A. Davidson Company, 450 Regency Parkway, Suite 400.
Social security number.
68114, postal box, I don't recall.
Thank you.
Would you like my residence?
You're good.
In any event, excuse me. So should the election pass in May, we would then regroup a little bit. We'll work with the stakeholders and the council to refine the ultimate terms of the bonds and the timing of the sale too, because I know we need to kind of iron out with Hampton and the architect how they're going to spend the money, how it looks like, when construction might start. So we're going to balance the need for proceeds along with maybe everybody's perception of the bond market at that time. Interest rates are starting to creep up just a little bit, so we want to kind of balance that in our financing plan. There could be one or more sales of bonds. We could do 2 sales, so we'll just kind of talk through all those options maybe after the election passes. But ultimately, we'll be selling bonds backed by the sales tax and other monies available to the city. So we should have a very secure and attractive instrument, and we're going to be expecting the lowest rates possible in the marketplace. And like all of your other bond issues, these will be sold tax exempt for Nebraska and federal purposes. So still good demand out there for these types of instruments. So that's we'll work through that schedule and all that over the summer. Any questions specific to what that process could look like?
question?
Yeah, so the timeline, say this gets passed, May 10th, then, is there any time constraint as far as from the time that this sales tax, gets approved by the voters to where we have to finally, do the bond and iron that all out? Like, what if the situation is still a little fluid as far as, gathering the cost information? Say that more money comes in from, an estate gift or something like that, and it changes maybe what our obligation could be. So is there are we 90 days after it's voted on, or is that fairly open?
The city council's got a lot of flexibility there.
Okay.
Like I said, we're gonna wanna balance, how you think the cash is coming in, what the obligations look like, when you think you're gonna start spending the money, along with how quickly do you think you need to get into the bond market.
Okay.
That's why I said, we might even do 2 sales. We might
But
do-
there's no statute that dictates once this passes, we have to,
that you have to sell
Move
bonds
by
within
this.
90 days. No, I think we'll wanna analyze the cash flows expected by the sales tax.
right,
And we'll work through what that means legally and financially. But there's no rule that says you have to go sell bonds within 90 days or you can't sell them. You have years to sell bonds.
okay.
We don't expect that to be the case. We'd like to see this thing off and running as soon as possible.
And I would assume our repayment schedule would be correlated to our anticipated sales tax revenue coming in from the increase.
Exactly. Again, we'll have some flexibility in how we structure that. We haven't talked specifics. It could look however we needed it to. The sales tax is gonna end when the bonds are paid. So, we could put some sort of I'm making up numbers here, but a 10, 15, 20-year financing plan, and then after 5 years, we reassess, and as those pledges have come in, we could call some bonds and maybe refinance the bonds after they become callable, and then shorten the, final maturity of the bonds. There's a lot of things we can look at, so we'll study that together as we analyze, all of the moving parts.
Okay, thank you.
But the assumption is that, you know, if this goes forward, that moment, you know, the bond rate's gonna be the lowest they're gonna be probably during the lifetime of this project, cause you don't imagine the bond rates are gonna, the interest rates are gonna go up and then come back down again, do you?
Right now, it doesn't look that way.
Right.
I've been saying bonds are going up for 20 years, and I've been made a liar every 5 years because I've come back to refinance all of the issues. But I think they're finally going up. So I think we'll want to jump on that. There's some other nuances that go into how bonds are sold, that still could create some opportunities down the road for interest cost savings. But I think we want to do the best we can. We want to plan this thing the right way and hit the market, hopefully at a good time.
As far as borrowing, I assume the assumption is that the sooner the better. I mean, money, as far as money, about as cheap as it's gonna be. for the most
I think
part.
that's right. Looking at, 20-year bonds right now, I think a year ago, we would have said the rates are, in the low twos, around 2%. I think now we'd say we're on something like this, maybe we're in the high twos, maybe 3%. So everything's a little wishy-washy.
Sure.
Rates, they kind of go up and down as they ultimately are going up. But
You're gonna perfectly time that so that it's the lowest, right? Got it.
perfect, I like that.
Thanks, Paul.
Not one that's used around me often.
Does guesstimate get used a lot more?
There's a lot of words we ought not get into.
Any other questions for Paul? So we'll have a couple resolutions here related to this. The first one is the interlocal agreement, and the second one is the actual placing the ballot question on the primary ballot. Any other questions or comments?
I'll introduce the interlocal agreement resolution.
Okay. The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2022-6. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Camperth, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks, 7-0.
The next resolution will be placing the ballot question on the May 10th, 2022 election. This would approve an increase in the local option sales and use tax by additional 0.5%. Greg, did you want to add anything to that?
No, it is what it is. Pursuant to state statute, we do need 6 votes at a minimum on this, based on sales tax statutes.
I just have a question on the wording. I know that it probably has to say what it says, but I wish these ballot questions could be a lot clearer than they are. And it's probably as clear as they can be, right?
So someday when you change the law.
Based on what Mike has provided us, this is about as clear as it can be and concise
I
in
figured
regards
so.
to, some of it